10 long games that can take over 100 plus hours for completion. Stalker 2: Heart of Chornobyl. This game is really big. If you want to do everything, it will take a long time. You will be stuck in the zone for over 100 hours, maybe even more. So basically, Stalker 2 is a survival shooter set in a dangerous radioactive world. You play as a stalker, someone who explores the Chernobyl exclusion zone looking for valuable things. But this place is not safe. The air is filled with radiation, the ground is full of deadly traps, and strange energy storms can kill you in seconds. There are also scary creatures that used to be animals or even people, but now they are something else. And there are humans too, some friendly, some who will attack you on sight. The world is always changing. Every time you leave a place and come back, something might be different. An enemy might move somewhere else. A monster might show up where it was safe before. Even the weather can make things harder. The zone never stays the same, so you always have to be careful. Surviving is not easy. You need food to stay healthy. Your weapons break over time. Your bullets do not last forever. If you get hurt, you have to find a way to heal. The enemies in this game are smart. If you make too much noise, they will hear you. If you hide, they will look for you. Some of them work together and they will try to surround you. You cannot just run into fights and expect to win. Finishing everything in Stalker 2 takes a lot of time. There are many missions and your choices matter. Some missions will disappear forever if you choose the wrong side. Some stories have different endings. There are also hidden places with rare items, but you have to explore a lot to find them. The game does not tell you where to go all the time. You have to figure things out on your own. This is a game for people who like tough, realistic survival. There is no easy way to play. Every step can be dangerous. If you want to 100% complete the game, be ready to spend a long time in the zone. This is not a quick adventure. It is a journey where you have to think, plan, and fight for every small victory. Yakuza: Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is an RPG set in modern Japan and Hawaii. You play as Ichiban Kasuga, a guy with a big heart who wants to help people, but life keeps throwing crazy stuff at him. The story is full of wild moments, emotional scenes, and funny situations. One moment you're in a deep, serious crime drama. The next, you're running around doing something completely ridiculous like fighting people in mascot costumes, or helping a random stranger with their problems. The combat is turn-based, but it is not slow. Every fight is full of crazy moves, big animations, and over-the-top action. You can pick different jobs, kind of like classes in an RPG. Some are serious, like a samurai-style swordsman. Others are completely weird, like a guy who attacks with a surfboard. Every job has different abilities, and leveling them up takes a long time if you want to unlock everything. Then there are the side activities. This game is packed with things to do. You can play arcade games, gamble, run a business, take part in huge side stories, and even manage a whole resort. There's a Pokemon-style minigame where you catch and train Street Fighters. There's a dating app where you can chat with people. There's even a full-on survival mode where you live on the streets and have to make money and survive. And all of this is outside of the main story. 100% completion in Infinite Wealth means doing everything. Every side quest, every job leveled up, every secret boss defeated. There are tons of collectibles and hidden challenges. Some mini-games feel like entire games by themselves. The amount of detail is crazy. Even if you just focus on one thing, it will take hours and hours to finish. This is a game for people who love big, long RPGs with deep stories, fun characters, and a lot of variety. If you just play the story, you'll still spend a long time in the game, but if you want to see everything, prepare for over 100 hours of wild, funny, and sometimes emotional moments. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is huge, but more importantly, it feels like a real adventure. This is the kind of game where you travel across a world, meet all kinds of people, and get caught up in something much bigger than yourself. It's a mix of action, drama, and just pure fun, and everything about it feels alive. This time, the world is open, and it actually feels like a place worth exploring. You're not stuck in Midgar anymore. You're out in the wild, running through forests, deserts, mountains, and places filled with weird and interesting stuff. There's always something happening, whether it's a strange enemy enemy attacking, a secret to find, or just a moment where you stop and think, wow, this place looks amazing. The combat is fast, smooth, and fun. You can switch between characters on the fly, use cool abilities, and pull off insanely flashy moves. Every character feels different, so fights never get boring. And the enemies? Some are gigantic, some are super aggressive, and some just look terrifying. Every battle feels like a challenge, but in a way that makes you want to keep playing. And then there are the side activities. This game is packed with weird, fun distractions. You might spend hours on a random card game, get stuck trying to win a mini game, or just run around helping people with completely ridiculous side quests. Some of it is serious, some of it is so silly that you can't help but laugh, but it all makes the game feel full of life. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is more than just a remake. It feels like a huge new experience with a world that keeps pulling you in, characters that make you care, and combat that never gets old. Whether you're here for the action, the story, or just to see what surprises it throws at you, this is one of those games that sticks with you long after you finish it. Metaphor, ReFantazio.
I'll cut you down.
This game is something special. It comes from the same people who made Persona, but instead of high school students fighting demons, this time you're in a huge fantasy world filled with magic, kingdoms, and crazy creatures. It's still got that cool, stylish vibe, but now it's mixed with knights, castles, and battles that feel bigger than life. The story is about a world without a king, and everyone is fighting to take the throne. You play as a traveler who gets caught up in this struggle, and now it's up to you to decide the fate of the kingdom. But this isn't a simple good versus evil story. There are multiple factions, deep choices, and characters that feel real. Some people will trust you, some will betray you, and the world changes based on what you do. The combat is fast and exciting. It looks like action, but it's actually turn-based with a twist. Instead of just standing still and picking moves, you can move around, set up attacks, and react quickly. It's like Persona, but with more freedom and strategy. You can also change your character's archetype, which is basically their class, giving you different skills and play styles. One moment you're a sword fighter, the next you're a powerful mage, and it's up to you how you want to play. The world is huge and open, but not empty. Every town, dungeon, and area has secrets to find, people to meet, and enemies waiting for you. And just like Persona, the music, visuals, and style make everything feel super cool and unique. The menus, the UI, the little animations, everything looks like it was made to be fun to watch and play. Metaphor, ReFantazio is not just another fantasy RPG. It's got deep story choices, fast and stylish combat, and a world that feels full of life. If you like games that let you explore, experiment, and experience a story that reacts to you, this one is going to be something special.
I will not let you die in vain.
Final Fantasy XVI. This game is not what some people expected. It's still a Final Fantasy game, but it feels completely different from the old ones. No turn-based combat, no party commands. This is a full-on action game, and that's exactly why some fans don't like it. But if you go in with the right mindset, you'll find something really special. The story is dark, serious, and emotional. You play as Clive Rosfield, a prince whose life gets completely destroyed when a war breaks out. The world is falling apart, and different kingdoms are fighting over these massive, godlike beings called Acons. These aren't just regular summons like in older games, they are gigantic god-tier monsters, and when they fight, it's like watching a full-scale war happen right in front of you. The combat is pure action. If you liked Devil May Cry or God of War, this feels more like those games than old-school Final Fantasy. You control Clive directly, dodging, attacking, and chaining together insane combos. No waiting for turns, no menu commands, just fast, intense battles where you can switch between different elemental powers from the icons. 1 second you're using fire attacks, the next you're throwing lightning, then suddenly you're teleporting across the battlefield with insane speed. Feels powerful, but also really smooth and fun. But here's the thing, some Final Fantasy fans hate this. They miss the old party-based system, where you control multiple characters, manage strategy, and feel like you're leading a team. In this game, you mostly play as Clive, and your party members fight on their own. You don't give them commands, they just do their own thing. For people who love RPG strategy, this might feel too simple. But if you love action-heavy combat that feels fluid and cinematic, this game is amazing. The world is dark and mature, almost like Game of Thrones. It's full of politics, betrayals, and brutal fights. The cutscenes are incredible, the voice acting is top tier, and the music? Absolutely insane. Every boss fight feels like it could be the final battle of a different game. You go from fighting enemies one-on-one to suddenly controlling a massive, godlike creature in an epic showdown. Not everyone will love Final Fantasy XVI. Some people will hate the lack of party control, the action-based combat, or the fact that it feels more like an action game than an RPG. But if you go in expecting a big, cinematic, story-driven action RPG, this game delivers some of the best battles, music, and moments in the series. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. This game is for a very specific type of player. If you love deep, complex RPGs where every choice matters, this is one of the best games out there. But if you don't like reading a lot, managing tons of stats, or thinking 10 steps ahead in every battle, this game might feel too slow or complicated for you. Rogue Trader is set in the Warhammer 40k universe, a world where everything is huge, dark, and violent. You are a rogue trader, a powerful leader who commands a massive spaceship and has the freedom to explore uncharted space. You're basically a mix between a king, a pirate, and a warlord, and you get to decide whether to rule with wisdom, greed, or pure destruction. The game is turn-based with very deep strategy. Every move matters, every character has a ton of abilities, and if you don't think ahead, you can get completely destroyed in a single fight. There are tons of weapons, powers, and skills, and battles feel like a mix of XCOM, Divinity, Original Sin, and classic RPGs. The game does not hold your hand. It expects you to learn the mechanics and make smart choices. Your crew is a big part of the game. Just like in Mass Effect or Baldur's Gate, you recruit a team of unique characters, each with their own backstory, personality, and skills. Some of them are loyal, some are dangerous, and some might betray you if they don't like your decisions. There are so many choices in this game, and they actually change the story in big ways. Who you trust, who you help, and how you handle conflicts can lead to very different outcomes. One thing people might not like is that the game is slow and complex. If you're looking for fast action, this is not the game for you. Combat takes time, conversations are long, and you'll spend a lot of time reading, planning, and making decisions. But if you love RPGs that make you think and strategize, this game is deep, rewarding, and full of amazing moments. So, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader is for people who love tactical combat, deep storytelling, and having full control over their choices. It's not for everyone, but for those who love this kind of RPG, it is one of the best Warhammer games ever made.
Beyond number, all must be cleansed in his name.
Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous. This is one of the deepest RPGs ever made. If you love games where your choices change everything, where combat is full of strategy and options, and where the world reacts to everything you do, this game will pull you in for over 100 hours. But if you don't like complex systems, tons of reading, and making tough decisions, it might feel overwhelming. Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous is set in a world torn apart by demons. You are a hero leading a crusade against them, but you don't just fight, you make huge choices that shape the entire war. Will you be a noble leader, a ruthless tyrant, or something much darker? The game lets you become a literal legend, giving you powers that completely change how you play. The combat is insanely deep. You can play in real time with pause or switch to turn-based if you want to be more careful. There are tons of classes, abilities, and spells, and enemies can be brutal if you don't plan your moves. The game does not hold your hand, so if you just rush into fights without thinking, you will get destroyed. Your party members are just as important as you. Each one has their own story, their own goals, and their own views on what you should do. Some will love you, some will hate your choices, and some might betray you if they don't agree with your path. You can also romance certain characters, but it's not just simple flirting. You have to build a real connection through choices in the story. One of the biggest features is the mythic paths. As the game goes on, you can become something truly powerful: a demon, an angel, a lich, a trickster, or even something more unique. Each path changes the game in a huge way, giving you different abilities, different storylines, and even different endings. This means that replaying the game feels completely different depending on the path you choose. Some people might not like how big and complex this game is. There are so many mechanics, so much dialogue, and so many choices that it can feel too much if you're not used to this kind of RPG. If you prefer simple and fast gameplay, this might not be for you. But if you love deep, story-driven RPGs where your choices actually matter, this game is one of the best out there. Mountain Blade 2: Bannerlord. This game is a medieval war simulator like no other. It throws you into a huge open world where you can do whatever you want. Become a noble knight, a ruthless warlord, a sneaky merchant, or just someone trying to survive in a world full of war and chaos. There's no right way to play, and that's what makes it so addictive. You start with almost nothing, a small army, a basic weapon, and a dream. From there, you build your own story. You can travel from town to town, fighting bandits, doing quests, trading goods, and recruiting followers. But the real goal? Becoming powerful enough to lead an army and conquer land. The combat is intense and skill-based. It's not just about clicking attacks. Every sword swing, every arrow shot, every horseback charge has weight to it. If you just spam attacks, you'll die fast. You have to aim, block, and time your strikes like a real warrior. Battles can be small duels or massive 500+ soldier fights, where you command troops while fighting on the battlefield yourself. The best part of the game is the freedom. You don't have to follow a story, you can join a kingdom, betray them, build your own empire, or just roam around hunting enemies for loot. You can even marry into noble families and raise your own dynasty, making sure your bloodline rules the land for generations. Some people won't like how open-ended the game is. There's no clear objective pushing you forward, you make your own goals. Some might also find the early game slow and difficult since you start weak and have to grind your way up. But once you get a strong army and start winning battles, taking castles, and making history, it feels incredibly rewarding. Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is a post-apocalyptic RPG where you do whatever you want. You wake up in a world that has been completely destroyed by nuclear war, and now you have to survive, explore, and rebuild your life. You can follow the story, go off on your own, or just wander through the wasteland looking for cool places, weird characters, and crazy weapons. And the game starts with a simple but emotional setup. You wake up after being frozen in a vault for 200 years, and your son has been kidnapped. From there, you step out into a massive open world where every town, every ruin, and every hidden bunker has something interesting to find. Some places are full of enemies, some have hidden secrets, and some tell small stories just through the things left behind. Combat is fast and fun. You can shoot in real time like a normal FPS, or use VATs, a system that slows down time and lets you target specific enemy body parts. It makes every fight feel cinematic and strategic, letting you pull off crazy headshots or blow off an enemy's weapon arm before they even shoot. The game is full of choices, but they are not as deep as older Fallout games. Some fans didn't like that the dialogue system is more limited, meaning you don't always get a lot of ways to respond, but the real strength of Fallout 4 is its open-ended gameplay. You can be a hero, a villain, a wanderer, or even just a builder, crafting your own settlements from the ruins of the old world. Settlement building is a big part of the game. You can create bases, set up defenses, and even make entire towns where NPCs live and work. Some people love this feature, spending hours making the perfect wasteland city. Others hate it, feeling like it takes away from the RPG elements. The world is full of factions, and you have to choose who to side with. The Brotherhood of Steel wants to control technology, the Institute is full of secretive scientists, the Minutemen try to rebuild civilization, and the Railroad fights for freedom. Who you join changes the ending, but some players felt the choices weren't as deep as in previous Fallout games. Some people don't like how Fallout 4 leans more toward action and less toward RPG elements. There are fewer dialogue options, less role-playing, and a lot of shooting. If you're looking for a deep RPG like Fallout New Vegas, this might not be what you expect. But if you love exploring, crafting, and blowing up mutants with crazy weapons, Fallout 4 is one of the most fun open-world games out there. The Binding of Isaac Repentance. This game is weird, dark, and insanely addictive. It looks simple at first, just a little kid running through creepy rooms, shooting tiers of monsters, but once you start playing, you realize this game is huge. There are hundreds of items, secrets, bosses, and hidden mechanics, and every time you play, the game changes. The Binding of Isaac Repentance is a roguelike, which means every run is different. You start fresh each time, picking up random power-ups that can completely change the way you play. One run, you might be an unstoppable god destroying everything in seconds. The next, you're crawling through rooms barely holding on, hoping for just one good item to save you. Luck and skill both matter, and that's what makes it exciting. The game is fast and challenging. You move through randomly generated dungeons, fighting enemies and bosses while collecting bizarre and often disturbing power-ups. Some make you stronger, some give you weird abilities, and some completely change the game. Every item you find stacks with others, leading to some absolutely insane combinations. Repentance is the final and biggest expansion to the game. It adds more of everything. New enemies, new bosses, new levels, and even new playable characters. There are secret paths, hidden endings, and challenges that can take hundreds of hours to master. If you want to 100% complete the game, it's going to take a long time. Now, just to let you know, since every run is different, sometimes you'll get bad items and feel completely unlucky. The difficulty is brutal, and you have to keep playing, dying, and learning to get better. It's not a game that holds your hand, and some players might find it too frustrating. But for those who love roguelikes, challenge, and discovering secrets, The Binding of Isaac Repentance is one of the best games ever made. The more you play, the more you unlock, and the more you realize just how deep this game really is. Kingdoms of Amalur. This is one of those games that a lot of people missed, but the ones who played it swear it's amazing. Kingdoms of Amalur is a huge open world RPG with fast, fluid combat and tons of content. It feels like a mix of Elder Scrolls, Fable, and God of War with a big fantasy world, deep RPG mechanics, and action-packed fights that never get boring. The story is about fate. In this world, everyone's life is already decided before they're even born, except for you. You are the fateless one, the only person who can change destiny itself. That means you're free to be whoever you want, change the future, and shape the world however you see fit. The combat is one of the best parts of the game. Unlike other RPGs where you just swing swords or cast spells, here it actually feels good to fight. Every weapon type has cool combos, special moves, and finishers. You can dodge, block, and chain together attacks in a way that feels more like an action game than a traditional RPG. You can be a sneaky rogue, a powerful mage, or a brutal warrior, and the game lets you mix and match abilities to create your own playstyle. The world is huge, full of quests, dungeons, and secrets. There are 4 different regions, each with its own people, lore, and problems. Every town you visit has a bunch of quests, and some of them are surprisingly deep. There's also crafting, factions, loot, and tons of side content. If you love RPGs where you keep finding new things even after hours of playing, this game has that feeling. There's a lot of freedom in how you play. You don't have to stick to one class. You can mix magic, stealth, and melee however you want. If you start as a warrior and later decide you'd rather sling fireballs, you can completely rebuild your character without restarting the game. For those who love RPGs with tons of side quests, this game delivers. Every town, cave, and hidden spot has something to discover. You can join factions, craft weapons, and find legendary loot. The world isn't fully open like Skyrim, but it's packed with things to do, so it never feels empty. And another heads up for you, so while the gameplay is super fun, some parts of the game feel a bit old school. The story is interesting, but it's not as character driven as something like The Witcher. The open world has clear paths instead of complete freedom, which might not be for everyone, but if you love RPGs where combat actually feels exciting, this is one of the best games out there. Batman Arkham Knight. This is one of the best superhero games ever made, but it's also the most divisive in the Arkham series. If you love Batman, this game gives you everything. A massive open Gotham to explore, the best combat in the series, and a dark, intense story. But if you don't like driving, the Batmobile might drive you crazy. This game makes you feel like Batman more than ever. You're not just running through hallways fighting goons, you're gliding across the city, sneaking through enemy bases, and beating criminals to a pulp with brutal takedowns. The combat is smooth and satisfying, letting you counter, dodge, and chain attacks together without missing a beat, and when things get stealthy, the game gives you tons of ways to stalk enemies like a true predator. The world is huge and alive. Gotham is dark, rainy, and packed with things to do. There are side missions everywhere, from stopping bank robberies to hunting down serial killers. Every villain has their own arc, so you're always discovering something new. And of course, there are Riddler trophies. Way too many of them if you're trying to 100% the game.
Both contestants are finally here.
Now the Batmobile, this is where the game lost some fans. Instead of just being a tool for quick travel, the game forces you to use it a lot, especially in missions. There are tank battles, chase sequences, and even puzzles that require the Batmobile. Some players loved it, others felt it was overused and took away from what made the Arkham series great. The story is dark and personal, focusing on Batman's biggest fears and how they mess with his mind. The Joker is still a huge part of the game, even though he's dead, and his presence makes everything more unsettling. The main villain, the Arkham Knight, is a mystery for most of the game, though if you know Batman lore, you might guess his identity early. For anyone who loves Batman, Arkham Knight is the ultimate superhero experience. It looks amazing, plays smoothly, and gives you so much to do. If you don't mind the Batmobile sections, this is the best game in the Arkham series. But if you just wanted more classic Batman gameplay, this one might test your patience. Monster Hunter World. This game's all about hunting massive monsters, crafting better gear, and doing it all over again. It sounds simple, but once you start playing, you realize how deep and addictive it is. Every hunt feels like a boss battle, every weapon has its own unique playstyle, and every monster is a challenge that keeps you on your toes. You don't just fight monsters, you study them, track them, and learn their weaknesses. Some are slow and heavy, others are fast and unpredictable, some fly, some burrow underground, and some get angry and completely change their attack patterns halfway through the fight. Every battle feels like a mix of skill, patience, and pure survival. The combat is heavy and satisfying, every weapon has a completely different feel. Greatswords hit like a truck but are slow, dual blades let you move fast and deal quick damage, bows give you ranged options, and there are even crazy weapons like the Insect Glaive, which lets you flip around like a ninja. Finding the perfect weapon for your style is part of what makes the game so fun to master. And the world feels very alive. Instead of just dropping into levels, you explore huge open environments where monsters roam freely, they interact with each other, fight, and even set up ambushes. Sometimes you're fighting a monster and a bigger, scarier one shows up out of nowhere, turning the hunt into a chaotic three-way battle. Progression is all about getting stronger. You don't level up like in other RPGs. You craft better armor and weapons using materials from the monsters you defeat. Every time you take down a tough enemy, you get better gear, which lets you take on even harder monsters. The grind never feels boring because every fight is different and every new set of armor looks cool as hell. For new players, the game can feel overwhelming at first. There are tons of mechanics and the monsters do not go easy on you. But once everything clicks, it becomes one of the most satisfying games ever. The thrill of finally taking down a monster that destroyed you before, that feeling never gets old. Monster Hunter World is the best way to get into the series. It's more beginner friendly than past games, but still has all the depth for hardcore players. If you love challenging fights, deep combat, and the feeling of constantly improving, this game will keep you hooked for hundreds of hours. Dragon Age Inquisition. This is one of the biggest RPGs ever made, and it gives you a whole world to shape. You're not just playing as a hero, you're leading an entire movement to stop a war, close a massive hole in the sky, and bring order to a world that's falling apart. The game gives you a ton of freedom, and the choices you make actually matter. You play as the Inquisitor, a character who survives a magical explosion and somehow gains the ability to close rifts between worlds. Because of this, you quickly become the leader of the Inquisition, a group trying to stop a deadly war, hunt down a powerful villain, and bring balance to the land. But nothing is simple. Every choice has consequences, and the game constantly makes you decide between what's right and what's necessary. The world is huge and full of things to do. Unlike older Dragon Age games, this one has open world areas that let you explore forests, deserts, mountains, and ruins at your own pace. You can hunt down rare enemies, find hidden dungeons, gather materials for crafting, or just wander around listening to your companions argue about everything. The environments look stunning, and each region has its own vibe, dangers, and secrets. Combat feels like a mix of strategy and action. You can fight in real time swinging swords, casting spells, and dodging attacks, or you can pause the game and give orders to your team like a true tactician. Some players love the flexibility while others miss the deeper tactical gameplay from older Dragon Age games. If you prefer a more action-focused RPG, you'll enjoy it, but if you wanted a hardcore strategy game, this one might feel a bit too simplified. Your companions are the heart of the game. Every character has their own personality, goals, and problems. Some will love you, some some will challenge you, and some might leave if they don't agree with your leadership. You can build friendships, romance certain characters, and even change their opinions over time. Their banter while exploring is one of the best parts of the game, making them feel like real people with real emotions. Some parts of the game aren't as strong. The open world areas can feel too big and empty at times, with lots of fetch quests that don't always feel meaningful. The main story is amazing, but some side missions can drag on, and while the choices you make are important, the final battle feels a little underwhelming compared to what comes before it. But despite that, Inquisition is one of the best RPGs of its time. It has a deep world, great characters, and choices that actually shape the story. If you love games where you lead a team, make tough decisions, and explore a giant fantasy world, this is a must play.
It grows larger with each passing hour.
Lost Judgment. This game is part detective story, part action thriller, and part let's go do random ridiculous things in Japan for hours. It's the sequel to Judgment, a spin-off of the Yakuza series, but this time, things feel even darker, deeper, and more refined. If you love story-driven crime dramas with intense combat, this is one of the best out there. You play as Takayuki Yagami, a former lawyer turned private detective. He gets involved in a high-profile case where a man is accused of a shocking crime, but things don't add up. What starts as a simple investigation turns into a huge conspiracy involving corruption, revenge, and justice. The game keeps you hooked from start to finish, mixing serious storytelling with moments of humor and absurdity that make it feel alive. Combat is fast, stylish, and brutal. Yagami isn't just a detective, he's also a martial arts master. You can switch between different fighting styles depending on the situation. Crane is for handling big groups, Tiger is for one-on-one fights, and the new Snake style lets you counter and disarm enemies. Beating up thugs in the streets never gets old, and the animations make every fight feel impactful and satisfying. But Lost Judgment isn't just about fighting, there's actual detective work too. You'll sneak around, tail suspects, pick locks, and gather clues to solve the mystery. Some parts are slow, but they help you feel like a real investigator instead of just a guy who punches his way through every problem. And then there's the side content, which is absolutely insane. One moment you're dealing with a murder case, the next you're helping high school students with everything from dancing competitions to underground robot fights. There are tons of mini games, arcade machines, boxing matches, skateboarding, and even a fully fleshed out Master System emulator where you can play old Sega games. If you get tired of the main story, you can waste hours just messing around. Not everything is perfect though. Some of the tailing missions can drag on and feel a bit repetitive. The detective mechanics aren't as deep as they could be, and if you don't like long cutscenes, the story might feel too slow at times. But if you're into rich storytelling, deep combat, and a world full of side activities, this game is fantastic. Lost Judgment is for people who love crime dramas, fast combat, and games that let you do way more than just follow the main quest. It's a mix of intense action, serious storytelling, and pure fun, and once you get into it, it's hard to put down.